the Ocean program. If you've heard of Ocean, Chad Jones is a guy to know. Chad Jones has a interesting introduction. I'm gonna wait a little moment because we're not at 11 a.m. yet, and the poor people who are joining on Zoom are gonna be without that beautiful introduction. So until that introduction, I'm gonna let you know how you can learn more. So if you go to www.clearwaterbaha'is.org, you can enter your information, you can register, and more importantly, with that registration, you can receive updates for our future events. With that being said, and knowing that we have future events, you can always come on our website, clearwaterbaha'is.org, and see what that event will be. That event, you'll see, again, the topic and its speaker. You can access it on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and you can also, more importantly, access the Zoom link and join on Zoom. So that being said, again, there is a library of these materials right on YouTube and Facebook. If you access the Facebook page through the website, clearwaterbaha'is.org, you can see a lot of our other posts. But if you just want to stick to our videos, you can see as well on YouTube all the videos that have been posted from Baha'i explorations and other subjects that have been presented at the Clearwater Baha'i Center. So the Clearwater Baha'i Center is a place where Baha'is meet in Clearwater. Because of coronavirus restrictions, we've decided to take our events that we had, again, in a local context with our people in Tampa Bay. It could be anybody, our guests, friends, family, visitors from abroad. Now we're bringing it to you. We're online, we're recording them, and anyone can join from anywhere in the world without having to visit Clearwater, Florida. So we've brought Clearwater to you. Now it is 11 a.m. Good morning, Chad. How are you?
Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
That's the requisite boomer question.
Well, that is a good question, because if we can't hear you, then this whole presentation is not going to go anywhere.
We'll see. Well, and, welcome. Shall I just start in?
No. I'm gonna give you that introduction I promised.
Oh no.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I have a question before I start the introduction. You know how they say keeping up with the Joneses? I think that a lot of people are gonna have to keep up with this Jones family, right? This is the Joneses to keep up with.
There you go.
All right, I'm gonna start up. Here we are. This week's topic: Ocean Interfaith Reader. Read, listen, search, share. Ocean is a custom ebook reader designed for exploration and study of the sacred literature of the world's religious traditions. It provides a simple cross-platform reading experience with an immersive audio-integrated reading experience and useful study of the texts and, of course, research tools. With that being said, Chad Jones, our speaker, is a typical Alaskan fisherman who lives in California. Which
Actually,
is to say,
we're in Arizona right now, so.
Oh, okay. Chad Jones is a typical Alaskan fisherman who lives in Arizona, which is to say he eventually tired of the mud, rain, and fresh air of Alaska, and he decided to explore the rest of the world. 20 years later, he had witnessed the last days of the Romanian Revolution, the home of Gengis Khan in Mongolia, and the birthplace of Krishna in Mathura. He had tested authentic Szechuan dishes in China, studied Arabic in Irbid, plunged into the blue hole of Dhahab, explored the caves of Solomon in Jerusalem, and counted waves at night over the seawall of Akka. He married his Punjabi princess in a Moghul castle in Rajastan. He traveled by camel to the pyramids of Giza, trekked the Annapurna Range in Nepal, retraced Laurence of Arabia's famous route to Aqaba, and hoisted a watermelon to the highest peak of Wadi Rum to feast while observing the planet's most glorious sunset. His software projects include Ocean, which most of the Baha'i audience is familiar with, and now Ocean 2.0, Interfaith Reader. With that being said, Chad, please take it away.
Wow. Half of that was stupidity, by the way. We hiked to the, in the Wadi Rum, we climbed the mountains there are amazing because they're like giant sandstone clouds rising out of the desert. And we hiked that mountain so that we could sit and watch the sunset, and we carried a watermelon to the top. And after that amazing sunset, we realized that we hadn't brought a flashlight. So getting down off the mountain was substantially harder than getting up. But yeah, that's what happens when you live in a place like Alaska, and you grow up with a lot of natural beauty, but also rain and mud. It was Southeast Alaska, so it was cold and wet, and you just want to see a little bit more. So I met other Alaskans and Australians all over the world. They're the ones who seem to want to get out the most for some reason. So yeah, thank you for that introduction. I want to tell the story of Ocean a little bit because it was a fantastic adventure. I met my wife my now wife. I met her in India. She was living in China. We eventually married in Rajastan, and while I was living in China and India, I had a lot of free time. So I set out writing this Ocean program. And it took me about 3 years of nonstop work. But before that, I just want to, the Ocean 1.0 program kind of made me a little crazy because the technology just wasn't there to do what I wanted to do. I had a laundry list of things I wished that I could do. And I ended up abandoning most of them. And I almost named Ocean 1.0 Lake, because of the accomplishments inside of it were so limited compared to what I really wanted to do. And so to explain where this is all going for me, I want to tell a little story. This is the Ocean adventure. And really, it all starts here. I was one of the thousands of young people in the 90s who had come out of Baha'i cultures. The Baha'i culture was kind of recreated in the 60s because the wave of baby boomers coming of age was the greatest demographic surge the planet had ever seen. And it completely overwhelmed Baha'i culture. And it was quite impossible, on one hand, for the hands of the cause and the fledgling House of Justice to deal with the large numbers of new Baha'is coming in. And so a lot of the very carefully crafted educational culture that the Guardian had worked half of his ministry to create was really swept aside. And I don't know exactly why this was. I think it's because there were just so many new Baha'is that it was impossible to do anything about it. And on the other hand, there was also a kind of millennialist euphoria amongst the Baha'is because they misinterpreted the influx of new believers as some kind of end of times event. You can hear the hands speaking back then about how in a few years the world's going to be Baha'i, and what they didn't seem to realize, what all the religions were experiencing the same phenomena. And it was not a minor plan activity, it was a major plan activity. That is to say, it had to do with the outside world. It wasn't a Baha'i event. But because of this, a lot of people thought that the rules had all changed and all of that educational stuff the Guardian had put in place was no longer applicable. And so it got really swept aside in a single generation. And that generation of Baha'is has a much lower standard of education than previous generations. And I grew up under that generation, especially in new communities like Alaska. There was really almost no Baha'i education. I could even say that the Baha'is were in a post-education culture. And so, like thousands of other young people of the 90s, it was a life-saving experience to have served at the World Center and attended the classes of Hooper Dunbar. He was one of the, he took thousands of kids through basically teaching them to read the writings of the Guardian, and the core literature provided by Shoghi Effendi in a kind of a one-on-one experience. And really, if it wasn't for that, so many of us wouldn't have ever learned to read the writings directly, and we would have had this Baha'i culture that was informed more by popular ideas than by the literature. And so I just want to put that out there, because that's what really got me started on this, was that we can't create 1,000 Hooper Dunbars and 1,000 classes, but what we can do is make sure that the tools are available for young people anywhere in the world who want to really do a deep dive into the literature of the Baha'i faith. I think that's the best we can do. And you know, right now the world is swirling in a materialistic storm. The Guardian used to say that the Baha'is think they will escape it, but they won't. And he pinpointed, he said, politics is the nerve center of this materialism. And right now you can see a kind of an obsession that the world has with fixing the old world order. And the Baha'is often get swept up in that. It's very difficult to do otherwise. So what I'm offering here is not a change to anything. It's just I hope I can help provide a lifeline to make it easier for people to interact with the actual revelation. We are a people of the book, and our relationship with the book is the only thing that we have to offer. That said, when I first wrote Ocean, it was I got the basic search tools in, and I added an interfaith library, and I was really surprised that in fact it became more popular amongst the non-Baha'is than the Baha'is. Non-Baha'is were using it all over the world in classrooms and universities. And so this next iteration of Ocean, I wanted to do the same thing, but something very important I learned in Hooper Dunbar's classes was the power of the spoken word. Now, the nature of Mr. Dunbar's classes, sorry if I dwell on this, but this is a key idea in immersive learning. Mr. Dunbar would alternate in his classes and his reading classes between the youth reading a paragraph, and then he would read a paragraph. Then a volunteer would read a paragraph, then he would read a paragraph. And it was striking to me as a young person how difficult it was to understand The Guardian when one of my peers was reading it, and how easy it was to understand The Guardian when Mr. Dunbar was reading it. And so it kind of dawned on me that there is a tremendous amount of information that is conveyed in the spoken word. When you have a reader who understands well, who's deeply knowledgeable in the literature, who's absorbed the literature, when that reader narrates a book, he carries with it a lot of additional information that isn't there for the eye. So that said, I always wanted some kind of experience where we could have a read-along experience to bridge the gap, the growing gap in literacy between our educated young people and the very difficult literature of the faith. And so that was one of the big inspiring ideas that I was working on. Now, when I did the original Ocean 1.0 in India, it was a lot of fun. I had plenty of free time. We were having study classes at my home, weekend study classes where we would do these cram sessions and read entire books in a weekend. It was a lot of fun. But back then, in order to get books, you had to have a good relationship with a photocopier. So we would end up photocopying entire books for each class. And that was just at the time when the internet wasn't very strong yet, but we had really good mobile technology. We had good CD technology, media technology, and the amount of data that could be stored on a single CD was astounding relative to the size of megabits in a book, right? So you've got this potential that where you could deploy an entire library on a mini CD. And so basically that's what we did with Ocean 1.0. We basically packed the entire library into about 40 megabytes, which fit conveniently on one of these little pocket CDs. And then we printed up thousands of pocket CDs and spread them all over the world, many by mail, many by courier. It was a blast, this project, because in northern India, we used to have a lot of visitors from Iran, for example, Baha'is coming to see the Lotus Temple. And a lot of them would carry ocean CDs back with them and spread them around. At one point, we had a collaboration with the youth committee in Shiraz, who was helping to spread the CDs and install it on everybody's computer. So everybody had this kind of research access to the especially the writings of the Guardian in English, which were not widespread in printed form. And at one point, we even got a pack of 10 CDs. We would take these CDs and get them into countries where they had no access to internet, for example. And it was much tighter back then. And we even went so far as to encode ocean into a set of music files. So we had a music player we could share with people, where if they went into the music player and typed in ocean as the name of the song, it would then install ocean on their computer. So we had just a lot of fun spreading these around in an encrypted format, getting them to people who didn't have access. And that was a fantastic project. And I think these little CDs went all over the world. So that was fun. I got a lot of help from friends all over spreading this around. So that's Ocean 1.0, or in other words, Lake. And it was really a search engine only. It had no ebook capability. And the search was really questionable, because a lot of the books were obviously, they had to be in search. But back then, there wasn't any way to do an online search. So there were copyright issues with, in order to do that, we had to include an encrypted version of books that had copyright protection. Of course, nowadays it's easy. You can provide search results online for copyrighted books, and it's not a violation of copyright. But back then, it was a real, it was really pushing the line a little bit about whether that was actually something that was compliant with the law. But like my favorite counselor, now House member Stephen Birkeland, used to tell me, just whatever you want to do, just do it. It's easier to apologize afterwards than to ask for permission. So I've taken that to heart, and I've done my best to be compliant with that worldview. I hope he still holds it, because here we go. So fast forward a decade, and boy, the Baha'i world was nagging me a lot. They really wanted better quality books. The books that I had in Ocean they had all the diacritics basically stripped out and simplified because it wasn't an indexed search. The search tools were very literalistic. They couldn't do any kind of fuzzy matching. It was English only. I had a few other languages, but this is before Unicode was very strong. So it was very difficult. I couldn't do any right to left with Farsi and Arabic. And the other languages were kind of weak too, although the advantage was it was really easy to add new languages, because you could drop whatever text files you wanted in, and it could find them without even needing to know anything about language, which was amazing. And of course, nowadays, most people are browsing apps and using the internet on their phones, and it really has to. It's so much harder. Back in the day, of course, you could just write a Windows app and most everybody could use it. But it's very different today. The operating systems have proliferated. It's not just a Windows and Mac world. Most people are on various operating systems on the phone. iOS limits a lot of what you can do, but also Android has its own fragmentation problems. So it's actually a lot more challenging nowadays to actually create an application that everybody can use. But so we set out, and I thought, this is going to take years. It's going to be very difficult. And I also have my own things that I want. For one thing, I want a good reading experience. Now, you heard this immersive reading before. And what that means is there's kind of a read-along narration. And the narrated read-along, this immersive reading, dramatically bridges the comprehension gap. And the comprehension gap is increasing over time. Our society is moving farther and farther away from classical literature. We're becoming, as time goes by, much more of a spoken language society. And literary language is dramatically different from spoken language. Even a child's book uses more vocabulary than spoken language. So getting people up to a high level of literary reading is a challenge that's increasingly not even being taken up. Schools are abandoning this instead of accepting the challenge. And this is one of the things Baha'is have to not fall into. Shoghi Effendi was really clear that we need to always be trying to raise the standard of studies. And, you know, I don't want to be critical about what Baha'is have done and are doing, but there is something to be aware of, that educators have this Achilles heel, that they tend to think that what they're doing is novel and interesting, but at the end of the day, the single most common trick all educators come up with is to dumb things down. And it just doesn't help in the long run, dumbing it down with every generation. And you know, I'm a big fan of Daniel Jordan, for example, but his comprehensive program of deepening, you know, it's a beautiful set. It's very good. It's maybe the best non-Shoghi Effendi program of study we've ever had. But at the same time, I've read his correspondence with Marion Lippitt, and he makes clear that his big idea for that program is to have a system of introduction to the Baha'i ideas that is simpler than the Guardians program. And so, you know, there's a certain amount of, there's questions that arise about, you know, should we really be dumbing down the Guardians program, or should we be trying to find ways to help people approach what the Guardian defined as rock bottom requirements, as fundamental prerequisites of success, as the firm foundation upon which success can be built? And the Guardian spent half of his ministry providing us with the core components of this very difficult program. At the same time, he warned us that a great harm is done by starting to teach without being firmly grounded in the literature. That he, you know, so he worked hard on providing that literature, and also challenged us to rise to the literature. So I wanted a tool that would help with that a little bit. And the reading gap was the biggest problem. So many young people, when you even sit down with them to read the talks of Abdul Baha, even though those are almost the simplest thing we've got, nevertheless, they have a lot of trouble understanding. And these are well-educated young people, but the modern education just doesn't take them in that direction. Now, that was one idea. I also wanted integration with study tools. I wanted people to be able to make compilations, to make notes, to share notes, to be able to do all the things people do together when they collaborate on studying. I had all these ideas in my mind. I wasn't sure if it was worth it, all the effort. It would take years to do all this. And then while visiting our dear late Ali Nachavani, he grabbed me by the arm and took me aside and said, you know, I've been watching very closely how the Baha'is are using ocean. I'll skip some of what he said, but he said, you have to continue on this project, and you have to make sure it includes Farsi, because the Farsi friends need this also. Okay, so that's a huge additional challenge, because right to left languages, Arabic and Farsi are right to left languages, but they're also script languages. The characters connect. There's just all kinds of additional challenges when trying to integrate Arabic and Farsi. So, okay, but there's the mandate. I took that to heart, and I've done my best to try to figure out how to do that. And finally, you know, the old ocean search required that I distributed the entire search library. And what I wanted was a search library that was 20 times the size of the old search library, and allowed more faceting and interesting search tools. And I've kind of got a prototype of that introduced into Ocean. And it's kind of cool, still a little rough around the edges because we're constantly trying new things. But I want the search functionality to be detachable from Ocean. I want anybody to be able to use it anywhere. So how did I do it? So here's the crazy idea. What if you create a nonprofit educational foundation which focuses on literary education through software? And so that's what I did. And with a lot of help from a lot of people, we created basically a secular program. It's called WholeReader. It's a secular educational tool that takes literature and gives that read-along immersive experience, and allows us to provide something that runs on an app that fills in the gap of at least the 50 or so million underserved children in the world that do not have access to good teachers. And it provides, you know, if you think about education in the bigger sense, education is 97% reading. Okay, really, especially secondary education, primary and secondary education, you can cover 97% of primary and secondary education with a good literature program, and the kids will be much smarter than they would be if they actually just went to school. The other 3%, I would say, is calculus. And this corresponds very closely with what I understand of Abdu'l-Baha's model school idea. In the last years of his life, Abdu'l-Baha outlined a model school he would like to create in Haifa, and it was a very interesting model. But basically, he had the entire curriculum completed by the age of 13 or 14. The kids would learn 4 languages in that time, and they would be ready to face the world, basically. And we really don't have that kind of model in the world today. But I did come across one homeschooling project that used a literature focus. And that literature focus was very interesting because instead of reading a really dry textbook on the Civil War, instead of that, the kids would read half a dozen biographies, autobiographies written by participants in the Civil War. And first of all, that curriculum is much more interesting. And second, those kids, they just demolished every standardized test. So I got thinking about this. What if we created a nonprofit program that used the same technologies we want for ocean, but use it for a massive international literacy educational project that we can push out to millions of kids all over the world, and use that as a support basis for this idea of the Interfaith Library. So to do this, we created 2 nonprofits, basically. We created this the School Firm Foundation, and we created software for it. This is the WholeReader project. It's got a ton of classic books in it, great storytelling, and it provides the 1,000 or so hours of read-along that every kid needs in order to become functionally, completely university-level literate. And it can be delivered on an app. So that's what we did. It was a lot of fun, really hard work because, this is not something that can be entirely automated. We can build tools around helping to do this, but we needed good narrators. We needed to align the narration, and that is all a lot of work. By align narration, I mean align every word in text to the audio that's read, which is, something of a challenge, to put it mildly. But from doing that, we basically got a free Ocean 2.0. And if Ocean 2.0 doesn't develop Baha'i features as fast as you might want it to, part of the reason is it's the freebie that we get for doing this other project. So it's always second priority, but little by little, I get my features out of it, and that includes really good audio interaction with the books. Every book in the Ocean Library, or eventually, will have audio aligned word for word, so you can basically listen along, you can read along, and you can use it in other contexts as well. And this is a strange new idea, this idea of immersive audio, but it's very powerful. And it really, for some reason, it helps the mind concentrate. Now, I come from a small fishing village, and we did not have very rigorous education. So I have a lot of bad educational habits that are kind of baked in as an adult. And so this, personally, for me, is a very helpful device to really focus my ear, my eye, and my mind together, and not wander off or lose the tight concentration that's necessary in order to go below the first layer of every book. And every book has many welayers. So this is kind of the idea. And if you haven't tried it out already, you can try it at oceanlibrary.com. It's a very, we'll put the links in the description, but it all has a web-based presence, which is very easy to get to. And I'll give a little demonstration of it in a moment here. I think that would be a good segue for the demonstration. Let me go ahead and pull it up. And I'll go ahead and go to the Ocean Library, the URL, just so you can see it in action. It's really that simple. And it's an interfaith library. Ocean is not a Baha'i project per se. It's a nonprofit interfaith. And really the Baha'is have to know other religions as well. We're not the only people of the book, and we're supposed to be able to bridge between other religions. And that's a really big challenge. If first we have to know our own literature thoroughly. You know, some of the, I can't really repeat this enough, but the standards for a functional Baha'i community set by Shoghi Effendi are quite challenging. The expectation Shoghi Effendi had for the knowledge of the children in a Baha'i community typically exceed what we expect for adults in a Baha'i community. So, for example, The Guardian was quite clear that the Dawnbreakers not only should be, you know, the unchallengeable textbook of Baha'i summer schools, but also that he expected the youth to master the book. He even said specifically, master the facts recorded therein. In other places, it said, memorize the proper names. And so, again, I don't think this is an end-of-life challenge. These challenges were meant to be a foundation on which a life of learning could be built. And I think it's pretty obvious if you think about it, that there's, if the Baha'is don't have that foundation, then we lose a lot of things. We lose the ability to question our culture. We're all surrounded by this materialistic culture that has its own ideologies, it has its own theories, and we have to somehow be able to question those and reflect on those. And if we don't have a really strong foundational Baha'i education, then we're frankly gullible to materialistic ideas, gullible. And so this is one of those things Shoghi Effendi worked hard to set up. So, but you know, I'm from Alaska. The Dawnbreakers is really hard. How the heck are Alaskan Baha'is expected to master the Dawnbreakers? And so I'm going to open the Dawnbreakers. And the first thing, if you ask anybody, the Dawnbreakers is a fun book because, you know, it's full of transliterated Persian and Arabic names. It's full. And frankly, they're in every publication Baha'is ever do, they're half misspelled. I mean, really half misspelled. And that makes it hard as a student to try to sort through it. And if you ask any Baha'i about the Dawnbreakers, he will tell you the same thing, which is that it's impossible because of all these names. Impossible. When I was a kid, and we talked about the Dawnbreakers in Alaska, and I think everybody's heard this before, but they literally gave us the advice that we should scratch out the names in the Dawnbreakers and replace them with Western names, John, Joe, Sam, you know, so we could read the book better. It's the worst advice ever, and it's kind of typical of giving up, but also it's such bad advice because nobody's ever actually done it. If you actually had to replace out every name with a Western name, first of all, imagine the detailed study you would have to do to figure out who's who before you could do that accurately. It would be a wonderful study of the Dawnbreakers now that I think about it. Maybe that was brilliant advice and I'm just misreading it. But at any rate, this was a challenge. And the Dawnbreakers is a hard book. The pronunciation is difficult. So what can you do? Well, you get a narrator who can do a good job with the pronunciation. And you know, because it was Ali Nachavani who challenged me to do this, we got the best reader in the world to do an audio narration of the Dawnbreakers, the best one. And that, of course, is the brilliant Bahia Nachavani. And she did a complete narration of this book, and it is just gorgeous. It is just gorgeous. She has such a beautiful slight British accent, and she does the Persian pronunciation in a way that's easy to hear, it's accurate, and it's beautiful. So if you haven't tried this yet, I highly suggest listening to some of her narration. She's just done a great job. Another thing we did that was fun with the Dawnbreakers and God Passes By was, you know, we have this problem in ebooks, which is the wall of text problem, which is that in ebooks, you don't have pages to flip. There's no tactile sense of demarcation of the book into units. And of course, you can't do pages on the computer very effective. People have tried, but it looks terrible, you know, and it gets in the way of things. So what we did instead was we took the Guardian's table of contents. This was Hooper Dunbar's idea. We took the Guardian's table of contents, which nobody ever uses. And I know nobody ever uses it because there's a mistake towards the end that nobody's ever caught, right? So we took the Guardian's table of contents and we inserted it into the text so that we have these little floating subtitles. And that just really makes it easier to follow the story and understand. These subtitles are all the Guardian's chapter headings, subheadings, and sub-subheadings. So this book and God Passes By both take advantage of the Guardian's table of contents, and it just really helps dramatically. So, okay, so that's the audio narration. I can demonstrate a little bit of this. I can demonstrate a little bit. I don't think you'll be able to hear it very well on my computer, but I'll go ahead and give it a try. We have basically play buttons next to every paragraph. We have a visual scrubber bar that the user can grab and drag, and wherever you drop it, it begins playing from that position.
I shall now relate the circumstances that led to that odious indignity which the persecutors of the Bab chose to inflict upon him. He had, in pursuance of the orders issued by Haji Mirza Aghasi, been transferred to the castle of Chehrig. And
now you can see what I mean. The reading by Bahia just completely simplifies the experience of enjoying this book. And when the eye is reading the words and the ear is hearing them, it's really the most effective way to learn the correct pronunciation of these words. It's the easiest way, it's the friendliest way. You know, you can learn the transliteration system in a very short period of time, but the practice necessary to do a good job of it is something that takes quite a bit of work. So that's one of the advantages of having immersive audio aligned with the book. Now, other than immersive audio, I should say that I really wanted good study tools, good note-taking tools. And so we integrated, you can see the whole book has paragraph numbering. Something that the House of Justice is moving the Baha'i publishing closer and closer towards a good paragraph numbering scheme for every book, so it's easy to have references to a book without page numbers. Page numbers are history. But you know, sometimes people still have books, and we wanted to provide the page numbers, so we had the page numbers kind of float at the side of each book. So they're still there, they're just not used as a primary means of addressing the book. Okay, so then we have integrated notes. I want to show this really quick. I won't spend a lot of time on it because, you know, all ebook readers have notes, but we've also added pop-up definitions, Wikipedia, fetch, easy addition of new notes, and highlighting of the notes as you scroll through. So for example, if your native language is Spanish and you're struggling with an English book, you can see a quick pop-up of the translation into Spanish or any other language you choose if you're struggling with the understanding of something. And you can also see a Wikipedia lookup of the term, if there is one, and a dictionary lookup of the term, if there is one. There's a lot of amazing information about the characters, especially the government and the officials mentioned in the Dawnbreakers in Wikipedia nowadays. It's stunning, actually. You can find stuff that Nabil didn't even know that really has a huge impact on how some of the officials in the Dawnbreakers carried out their business. So we can get into that later if you're interested in using modern technology to dive into the Dawnbreakers. But I just wanted to show real quick that we've got this integrated contextual note-taking, sharing, compilation extraction, and audio playback, all integrated into the ebook service. And I'll demonstrate that really quickly. Let's go ahead and look at the library, though, first devotion, because I want to point something out. This is a big project, and it's going to take years to get it done, especially the audio narration and integration of audio. So this is the Baha'i section in Ocean, and you can see the icons for each book that show a little audio icon if the book has integrated audio. And we have about 20 books with integrated audio so far. Still, we're only halfway to completing the core Baha'i library with good audio. So it's really a big job. We've been working on this for years, and we'll continue to do so. But if you see an audio button, you know that this one has been narrated, and you can do the read-along experience. And we tried to start with the books that have the most challenging pronunciation issues. So God Passes By, Traveler's Narrative, Dawnbreakers. And then once we accomplish those ones, those are the books that have the most names in them. So it's relatively easy for people to follow along with those. And then once we did those, we could focus on the other works. Obviously, the writings of the Guardian are the most difficult from a literary point of view, but the books with the transliterated names are the most challenging and give the users, give the Baha'is the greatest excuse to just skip over and ignore. So we wanted to kind of tackle that one first. So now you're looking at this, you're thinking, what the heck? This isn't like Ocean 1.0 at all. Ocean 1.0 was all about search, and this is just this is a library of books. And that's exactly true, but search is still there. It's just been demoted to a secondary status. At present, search is simply a pop-up that you get by searching, clicking the search icon in the top right. And it's we're going to have two types of search, kind of an in-depth search and a lightweight search. And right now we only have the lightweight search available. But it's a search that's not only a search of the books in the library, but thousands of other books as well. The new Ocean Search spiders major Baha'i websites that have great content and pulls the content in and links back to the website. So websites like Ocean of Lights, Baha'i Library, some of the new translation sites from some of the gifted young translators. We try to pull as much of that in as possible, as well as thousands of copyrighted books. And we don't have to share the copyrighted books with anybody, so we can just provide a search interface into the content of those books without violating any copyright laws at all. So, and because Ocean now has a fully indexed search, it gives us a lot of ability to search for things with bad spelling or with transliterated names. And I'll show you what I mean by that really quick. Let's try Malakut. Okay, now the correct spelling of Malakut has an accent over the U, but Ocean just ignores that completely and is able to phonetically find Malakut even when it's spelled with different variants. And just in case you don't believe me, I'm just going to switch over to Arabic right now. And I'm going to search in English for Malakut again. And for those of you that can read the Persian and Arabic script, you can see it's still coming up with the word Malakut correctly. It is a purely phonetic search. Now, of course, if you don't want a purely phonetic search, you can put a word in quotes and it does a better job of it, of more of an exact search. And you can still, just like with Ocean, you can limit search results by using part of the name of the book or the author and the title or something like that. So for example, I'll say Mirza Hossein Ali. All right, that's a typical Dawnbreakers search. But you don't have to spell it right. Let's try EIN, for example. Again, embarrassingly, there are a few places in the footnotes and stuff where it's spelled this way, or with two S's or something like that. But it still finds the correct spelling of Hossein. And this is important because Baha'is typing won't necessarily know how to spell a word correctly, and because there's so many variants of transliteration used out there. So when pulling in third-party literature that can be very interesting to search on, you don't know how these words are going to be spelled necessarily. So phonetics really help with the basic character search of names in the Dawnbreakers and Baha'i names in general. So as you can see, this is pulling up the Dawnbreakers and individual quotes with Hossein Ali spelled in several different ways. It's finding sentences that can contain Mirza Hossein Ali in any combination. And it tries to put the best ones at the top.
How long did it take to get this together, this one part? This is a question from the audience. How long did it take to put the dictionary together?
So it's not a dictionary search, it's a phonetic search. But the time, trying to get the text of the Dawnbreakers correct was an absolute nightmare. And then, of course, there's God Passes By and all the other books. The correct spelling of these words, I used to do these Dawnbreakers classes where we would teach the kids the pronunciation first, and then we do a reading of the book and have them sound out every single word, okay? Well, when you pay that close attention, you quickly come to notice that there's about 1 to 2 misspellings on every single page of the Dawnbreakers, and we're still talking about the Guardian's version, the green version. When you take the reader versions, like the British had a very nice little brown travel version, which took out a lot of footnotes, but left the majority of the text in there. Wow, it was just slaughtered. And then if you go the next step and you look at the electronic text that we have online, thousands and thousands of errors. So just the time, we in fact did have to create a dictionary of correct spellings with, just to get the Baha'i library in shape well enough to use electronically for a student. It's one thing if you're going to read a quote at feast or something, who cares? But if you're studying a book and you've been learning the transliteration system and you're trying to do a good job of it, then it's very disconcerting when words are spelled haphazardly. So just the correction of the terms was months and months of work. We had to go through every single term mentioned in every single book in the Baha'i Library and check against the dictionary, make sure that, there's a lot of variants on words. You have Sadek and Sadiq, Vahed and Vahid, there's variants. And this, when I was a student myself coming out of Haifa, trying to learn these words was frustrating because you try to distinguish between Vahed and Vahid, and you check God passes by to see if you're right, and you think you're right, but actually God passes by printing is wrong. So we've got human editors through the whole chain of production of our books that just introduce, it sounds crazy, but literally thousands of errors. I once ran this. Once we finished the whole test, we ran it against some standardized sets of libraries. And in the core Baha'i library, the online electronic versions have about 12,000 identifiable errors. And most of it is not serious or anything. It's like missing a dot under Hossein or under Yahya or something like that. They're not serious, but they're still incorrect. And what you'll notice in Ocean is that they're not incorrect. And you cannot do that by hand. You have to use dictionaries and technology to do that. And so, yeah, that was just getting the text into good shape was a huge, huge project. And don't even ask me about all the replacements of the pictures in the Dawnbreakers with handmade watercolors. That was a whole nother project. So, okay, so we've got an example of read along, of note taking. So, for example, I take Haji Mirza Agassi, and I want to make sure to add a little note about him. And I've got my notes floating in the side, and my notes are available to me in a side panel if I want them. And the idea of this was to help organize notes for classes. You could create notes, share the notes, and print the notes, and use other people's notes. A lot of the interesting things we've got, literature of the Baha'i Faith, like we have Ishraq Khavari wrote this 4-volume dictionary of the Igan, right? And it's all basically notes from his own research about what the meaning of this word or that word is, what the tradition is behind this or that. And all of those things could be applied nicely eventually as overlay notes on top of the text. They don't really, we don't want to go the traditional religious route where the notes are integrated into the text in some permanent manner that gives them too much importance. But as an overlay over the text, if you want to see, for example, Hooper Dunbar's book on the Igan or Ishraq Khavari's book on the Igan, and you want to just turn on the notes that they created, the annotations they created, future technology is going to allow us to do that. And so this is kind of one step in that direction. But also, like the introduction stated, quotes that are divorced from the text lose value. So if you could bring together a little bit the context of the book with the quote, how cool would that be? And so that's where the sharing comes in. So for example, I have this great quote I just love, and I want to share that to Facebook or something like that. I'm just going to do this live. Why not? People will be curious on my Facebook stream. The question is, how do you take a quote that you paste to Facebook and provide people with the context of that quote should they be interested. So for example, I'm going to say, wow. Nobody's going to know why I'm doing this, but there it is on my Facebook feed. Now when I go back to my Facebook feed, you'll quickly see that I have no friends. So let's look at the Facebook feed. There it is. The Dawnbreakers was posted here. We're having a few. This is a brand new edition, and we're having a little sizing issues with some of the icons. I apologize for that. But the quote shows up as a quote, and it's linked to the book. Now the quote is, "I shall now relate the circumstances," right? So if you actually click on the link for that quote, then it quite literally opens a new browser tab, opens up Ocean in the browser, opens up Dawnbreakers in the browser, finds the paragraph, scrolls to it, selects the quote, and yes, we are working on getting this faster and faster. We just implemented this 3 days ago. But the idea is quotes that you share now come with references that link to the quote in context, highlighted for the user. And no matter how you share with Ocean, if you share by email, you copy and paste, you stick it in Facebook, whatever you do with a quote from now on, that quote will literally highlight the passage that was quoted when you link back to it. So I've been wanting this for a long, long time, because this separation of quotes from the book is in some ways culturally harmful, because we can't immediately jump back, read it in context, see if we agree with, or maybe there's other insights we can derive from the context that it's in. And so this is a great tool. So that's the sharing aspect of it. There's also the compilation building aspect, which I don't really think I have time to go into today. We only have 10 more minutes of presentation. But you can essentially, in the old Ocean, you could build compilations by extracting out from the text. In Ocean 2.0, you can do the same thing, except that the compilations you build, I guess I just have to show this off. So there's no way around it. Let's say I want to search the Dawnbreakers for that thing about Mullah Sadek. Remember, after Mullah Sadek went to, he was in Esfahan while the Bab was on pilgrimage, and then he wanted to see the Bab, so he went to Shiraz, and he got there right after the Bab had left. And so he hung around in Shiraz until Qudus, the Bab returned from pilgrimage, Qudus joined him. They were together doing teaching in Shiraz, and they created this big furor because the Bab had commanded that the formulation of the azan be changed. So Mullah Sadek went up and used this new azan and created this crisis in Shiraz, and until Hossein Khan had him arrested. So let's look for Mullah Sadek. At that time when he was reading the Qayyum al-Azma aloud to an excited populace. Excited, maybe. So we're trying to find that passage so I can share it on Facebook or something. Here it is. This is the prelude to the arrest of the Bab by the evil Hossein Khan. Okay, so here's the passage. I'm just going to open this in the Dawnbreakers real quick. And what I want to do as an example is I'm going to take this passage of Mullah Sadek, and I'm going to, Mullah Sadek is hand to the cause, Ismallah al-Asdak. He's pretty much my favorite character in the Dawnbreakers. And so I've created a little, and it's so understated here that I just laugh every time I read this, this quote. So I'm going to go ahead and extract this to my favorite Mullah Sadek compilation. And it sticks it in a compilation. Now the difference between Old Ocean and New Ocean is that the audio goes with the selection. So we literally cut out the selection and we put it into the compilation. So if you make a compilation on fasting or a compilation on the importance of study, whatever you want to study, you can pull it into a compilation and literally download the audio file for your whole compilation. And you can share it as well. Here's the shared version of the Mullah Sadek compilation. And as you can see, there's a download audio link at the top, a download PDF link at the top. There's even a QR code at the bottom for this compilation. So if you wanted to hand this out in a classroom, you want to make a compilation for study in a class, you can hand this out, and the students can all use the QR code to easily get a copy of the compilation for themselves, or if they want, pull it into Ocean and keep working on it for themselves. So this idea of allowing people to take their effort in building something, in studying the writings and share it with others as a foundation for other people's study of the writings is something that I want both with compilations and with notes. And that's kind of what technology offers us for the future, is the ability for people to collaborate on these things. And I really wanted to add the audio with it because I love going for a walk and listening to a compilation of audio I've made about a topic in order to really help me absorb the quotes over and over again. It just takes a lot of going back to a quote and listening to it and chewing on it to start going below the initial layer and unpeeling it layer by layer. So, so that's compilations. Now, this whole immersive thing, I just want to show you this real quick. But in order to do this, we literally had to build our own software just for the audio alignment part of this challenge. And I'll show you that. It'll take just 30 seconds, but this is a little internal tool that we've built called Elm, which is just for taking books, narrating the books, aligning the audio of the books. So for example, here's a famous kids storybook, Stories from Kalila Wadimna, and I'm going to open that book and demonstrate how this book was narrated. And you can see the green on the words. That essentially means that those words have audio that has been manually aligned to fit. And let me open one of these up real quick so you can see what I mean. This is the waveform of the audio for this brief paragraph. And if I click on one of the words, you can actually hear the audio and it highlights the word as it plays it. And as you can imagine, this is a huge amount of work to bring in the audio for a block of text and then align every single word. So, you know, if it seems sometimes that features move slowly in Ocean, nowadays, they really do, because there's so much work. Back in the old Ocean days, man, we just dropped a bunch of text files into a folder and we were good to go. And we simply don't have the ability to do that with this. Trying to reach this higher level of reading experience requires just tremendous amounts of effort, but it's totally worth it. And I'll show you really quickly. I think I have 4 minutes left. I'll show you really quickly why. Here's another example of, this is a brief introductory Arabic primer that I want to release next year for Baha'is who want to learn Persian and Arabic. It just basically takes you from the beginning of the alphabet through the kind of some of the more complicated rules, but it does it with audio alignment so that you're listening the whole time, because language is 90% ear and 10% eye. Now, there's nothing scientific about that. It's just that as human beings developed language, it was a musical experience. Language is musical. So if you cut out the ear, you're removing 90% of the natural pattern. You know, you look at how Muslims learn Arabic, and they learn the Quran first. And that poetry, that rhythm, that music of a language is how you actually master the grammar. So here's an example in front of you of a really simple approach to learning Arabic, where the phrases are translated and the words are translated, and they all have aligned audio. So you can you can split them up. You can split them up into phrases and sentences, and the audio comes with the words. And then from this, you can build a number of very interesting tools for practicing that integrate the audio. And pretty much every language book ever written is missing the most important part, which is integrated audio. And this is, again, this is one of those things technology is going to open up for us in the future. And one of the things we can do with this aligned audio now that we've built the tools for actually doing it. I just want to demonstrate really quickly. I forgot to do this before. I mentioned it, but I didn't do it. If I select some text in Ocean and I copy the text and I share it on Skype or in an email or whatever, this is what I meant by the link to the book. Basically, the reference that's generated now is just like the reference that was generated in Ocean 1.0. So for example, this is from Nabil the Dawnbreaker's chapter 16, paragraph 28. So it's a brief reference. The difference is that that link does the same thing as the Facebook sharing. It goes right to that quote. So I hope that people like this feature, because basically anytime you want to quote something, you can do it in a way that provides people a quick link to that quote in context. Now we only have a couple minutes. I want to show just one more quick thing, which is that because we have all these words aligned, because we have all these paragraphs defined, because we have all the chapters defined and the chapter names defined, and so on and so forth, we've been experimenting with other ways that we can export the data from this. And I want to demonstrate one that David Hunt has been working really hard on lately, and it's just about ready to release. And that's the Alexa skill. And so I think there's no way really to describe this. You have to hear it for yourself. So be patient with me for a moment. I'm going to do a live demo of code that is currently being deployed. It takes about 4 hours, 5 hours to deploy the library to Alexa. And right now it's in the middle of doing it. Whoops, I just woke her up. So I want to show you an example of this.
It's 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Alexa, open Ocean Library.
Welcome back. You were last reading Obadiah. Shall I continue?
No.
What can I do for you?
List commands.
You can ask for a list of books by category or by author, like list Christian books, or list books in the Buddhism category, or list books by Baha'u'llah. You can also ask for a list of categories, like list categories, or of authors in a category, like list authors in Christianity, or list Christian
Alexa,
authors.
Stop. Alexa, ask Ocean Library to read the Kitabi-i-Gan. Alexa, ask Ocean Library to read the Kitabi-i-Gan.
Okay.
The Kitabe-i-Gan, the Book of Certitude, Baha'u'llah. The Kitabe-i-Gan, Part 1. In the name of our Lord, the Exalted, the Most High. No man shall attain the shores of the ocean of true understanding, except he be detached from all that is in heaven and on earth. Sanctify your souls, O ye peoples of the world, that haply ye may attain that station which God hath destined for you, and enter thus the tabernacle which, according to the dispensations of providence, hath been raised in the firmament of the Bayan.
Alexa, stop. Alexa, ask Ocean Library to read the Dawnbreakers from chapter 10.
Okay. Chapter 1.
Alexa, stop. Alexa, ask Ocean Library to read the Dawnbreakers starting from chapter 10.
Sheikh Ahmad Afzai, his departure from Bahrain to Iraq, his visit to Najaf.
It's very rough. Alexa, ask Ocean Library to list books by Baha'u'llah.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah, that's typical.
Would you like a list of authors or categories? What can I do for you?
List books by Baha'u'llah.
Books by Baha'u'llah. Days of Remembrance, Epistle to the Son of the Wolf, Gems of Divine Mysteries, Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah, Prayers
Alexa,
and Meditation.
stop. Alexa, ask Ocean Library. Alexa, stop. Alexa, ask Ocean Library to read the book of Obadiah. Alexa, stop. Alexa, ask Ocean Library to read the book of Obadiah.
Okay.
The book of Obadiah, the vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. We've heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen.
Alexa, stop. So I hope that that helps. It's still a little rough, but you can see the possibility for this. I just got an Alexa Auto, so I have this crazy lady in my car now. And I'm just hoping that with technology, we can take what we're already doing and extend it into other spheres of life. We can make sure that it's easy for me to read a book while I'm brushing my teeth, while I'm driving my car, while I'm traveling. It's easy to study a book and keep track of the notes, share them with others, export them, import them. It's easy for me to focus my study on particular topics, pull down quotes that I really want to go deeper into and listen to them over and over. It's easy for me to have the experience on all my devices, no matter where I go. And then really it's, you can't actually change the human will, but you can provide opportunities for that desire to study, for that desire to go deeper in the Word of God to be expressed. And that's all I can really do here, is try to push forward some tools that increases the surface area of people and their spiritual traditions. So that said, guys, I know we're all frustrated and suffering from this curse of COVID-19 nowadays, which means we can't have interesting events in person. But boy, when this COVID-19 thing is over, let's get together and do a study of the Dawnbreakers. What do you say?
That's a great idea. It's a great idea. And actually, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
So someone asked,
what's up?
Okay, don't call that, please. This is so exciting.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Did I just kick off everybody's Alexa devices?
Maybe. All right, so here we are. So Leslie says, this is so exciting. She's been waiting. She's been wanting Baha'i audiobooks to listen to. So she's asking, do any already exist, or is this the first?
Do any Baha'i audiobooks already exist?
Yeah.
Well, we've had Baha'i audiobooks in the past. There's a few out there. We used to have a collection of Baha'i books read for the blind. And, you know, God bless the people involved in that project, but they were just, you know, the type of reading you do for the blind is not the type you or I would like to listen to. It was just lifeless, emotion-free reading. They're not dramatic. They're not interesting. And so we just tried to take that up a notch and figure out, okay, how can we make Baha'i books that are, you know, they're not fully professional. There's some Baha'is that do professional Baha'i audiobooks where they really spend a lot of time mastering them and just wonderful, wonderful quality. But what we're trying to get is like that 80-20 rule. We want to get really good quality, but not professional quality. And we want to get it for everything, starting from the most difficult ones and working our way down. And eventually we're going to figure out, this is really hard, but we're going to figure out voice interface for reading, for navigation, and for search as well. Since we have every single word plugged to audio, we can fetch out selected sentences from search results and feed them out over an audio interface. And of course, that's right now, David Hunt is shaking his head hearing me say this because of how hard it was just to get the Ocean Library in kind of like audible form. One of the fun things that he's just been working on all night last night was all of those descriptive headers. You know, you can say, you know, open, you know, Dawnbreakers to chapter 20 or chapter 19. But what if you could also say, you know, start reading the Dawnbreakers from the chapter Mazindran upheaval? Or what about all those subheaders, you know, from the arrest of the Bab by Hossein Khan, from the martyrdom of Tahrir, all of those subheaders then become kind of points of access for voice interface. So again, a lot of this technology is kind of new and it's a little flaky sometimes. I mean, trying to get all this to work on an iPhone is so frustrating, but that's what we have to do. We have to make the most important thing in life, which is the Word of God, as accessible as possible to everyone.
Speaking of which, is Ocean 2.0 accessible now?
Oh yes, oceanlibrary.com. There's a web version and an app version for iOS and Android. There's a desktop version for Mac and Windows, but we're trying to make the web version fully capable. So it's easiest if you just go to oceanlibrary.com and it's right there.
So all one word, oceanlibrary.com. Right?
That's right.
Right. Cool.
And if anybody's interested in the literacy project, the secular literacy project, that's at WholeReader.com. WHOLE, one word, WholeReader.com. And if anybody's running a Baha'i school and you want to have something that there's the immersion of the narration with the audio dramatically boost vocabulary acquisition. And so we're having just amazing success with kids on the secular track reading good literature with aligned audio. And we've got integrated vocabulary assessment tools that will allow us over the years to actually track how effective we are. But the fact we can put the whole library and the program into a single app, it's kind of cool. So we're going to do a big push this year to get it into thousands of schools around the world.
Okay, so two-part question. I'll say both parts right now, okay? First, how do we activate Ocean on our Alexa? And second, how many years has it been since she declared?
Well, Alexa is still on the fence a little bit. She's constantly pretending to misunderstand what I'm asking for. So I'm not sure what to say on that one. The Ocean Library skill, Alexa skill, and we'll have this for other platforms eventually, but it was quite a challenge figuring out how to get it working on one. We're about 3 or 4 days more work away from getting the chapter navigation working smoothly. It's basically, as of 2 hours ago, we got it working at all. And then within a few days, we'll have it working smoothly. And that's the last requisite before we release it to the public. So probably in a couple weeks, I'll send out an announcement that the Alexa app is ready with instructions. So if anybody wants to hear about that, sign up for my announcements list. I have an email announcements list for Ocean that where we announce anything Ocean related, any new changes that are Ocean related, I'll send them out on that list. And I send out that list about once a year, so it's not a hard one to join. And can we leave some links in the description or something like that for people?
Of course we can. Yeah, Jeremiah and I can try to leave something on the video here on YouTube, Facebook, of course on Zoom. We're on the Zoom chat, but we're going to be putting it on the website, clearwaterbaha'is.org as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Also on my Facebook feed, I just pushed out a post a couple hours ago that I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the people that have asked me to let them know when we're doing this or that. When are we going to have the next Dawnbreakers class, and stuff like that. So I just created a general purpose announcement list, and I put a link to sign up to it on my Facebook. And that's just any of these things you want to be kept in the loop of. It's just whenever we do something new, we'll send out a little note catching people up on how they can access it.
So here's this question. There's several questions coming in, so I'm trying to get in order here. So the question that Payam had, he asked it again, but he asked it several times. And we're not going to ask how you got them on, but we do want to know, why are there watercolors pictures in the Dawnbreakers?
The Dawnbreakers is full of really kind of epic photographs.
Uh-huh.
Hold on.
And while you're finding that, Alex Boyson very well. I like that question a lot. He asked, how can we support this project? Do you guys accept donations, etc.? How can people support it?
Oh, that's really easy. You know, I'm not a big fan of liberation theology, but the world is gaga over liberation theology. And the whole Western culture is suffused with terminology that came up from those guys. And we use a lot of that stuff in the Baha'i faith, the terminology. And most of it I just ignore as often as possible. But my God, they came up with an idea, a term that I love. I absolutely love. And it's called accompaniment. And the idea of accompaniment in liberation theology is that someone who knows something makes an effort to share it with someone who doesn't. And if I could just, you know, my one plea in life is the same every time, is that if you really want to help, sit down, find some youth and read the Dawnbreakers with them. Because we're not going to solve the educational challenges unless we start really all kicking in. It's something everybody has to participate in, especially if you come from a Persian or Arabic background and the terminology is accessible to you so that you can add some explanation. The project, the Ocean Project, is going to be supported by an international secular educational initiative. And we're going to be going after lots of funding for pushing the secular project. And the ocean side of it is kind of a freebie that we get from that nonprofit educational initiative. So I'm not trying to raise money for this thing, but if you want to help the overall idea of ocean, the idea of ocean is try to bridge the literary gap that we have that's growing every day between young Baha'is and their literature. And so far the Baha'is have mostly not even tried to solve this problem. And it's one of those problems you can't solve from the center. Every Baha'i has to find a way to participate in accompanying others in learning to read this very difficult literature and study it deeply. So that's kind of, I know that's not what was being asked for, but that's my plea. Like, if you really want to help, give a Dawnbreakers class. There's just no other way. If you haven't mastered the Dawnbreakers already, do that first. Remember, Baha'u'llah said, before all else, teach thine own self. And then Shoghi Effendi spent half his ministry explaining what that meant. And he gave us all the outlines of what it means to teach your own self. And we've, you know, basically that's our only job. It's a twofold job. We have to teach ourselves and teach others. And so, I don't know, this is my plea. If everybody, you know, sends me a pin or sends me a location, and I'll put on a map every place where people are giving Dawnbreakers classes. I focus on Dawnbreakers not because it's core doctrinal literature. It's not. There's a beautiful letter from The Guardian that Ali Nachavani published in his last book, in which he points out that the Dawnbreakers is not merely a narrative, it's a book of meditation. And the reason that's important is because specifically what the Dawnbreakers has us meditate on is the purpose of life and death. And in the materialistic age we're in, where the whole world is obsessed with trying to use material means to accomplish virtue, trying to fix the old world order without fixing their own selves. The Dawnbreakers is a refreshing opposite of that, because it's a book all about death and attitudes towards death. And there's nothing, it's, you know, the meditation on death, which is the cornerstone of spirituality, is like a cross to a vampire to the materialist, because the materialist at the heart is someone who wants to fix this world. Okay, and he feels like he's virtuous in trying to fix this world. In the process, of course, he never fixes this world, and he also misses the unique opportunity to fix himself. So, you know, that's the only thing I really want to get out of this, is try to figure out if there's some way you can use this tool to give classes. That's really what I was hoping to get out of this. Find a way to bridge that gap with the younger Baha'is. We've got a demographic pattern in the Baha'i community that's shocking. The entire baby boom generation were so poorly educated that they were never, as a whole, they were never able to teach anyone, and not even their own children. And so we've got a demographic cutoff where all of the Baha'is are aging out, and there's almost no one to replace them. And the only way we're going to fix this is if we all pitch in on And you can't wait for the institutions on this. The institutions have done all they can to encourage the study of the writings. They've done all they can. And we have to pick up the slack as individuals and take it the rest of the way and make it part of our experience. It's the only weapon we have to fight against the dangerous materialism that's sucking the world into its cesspool vortex, if you will. So that's really my my hope for all this, is that these are some tools that will help people in that process. And when this COVID thing is over, we really have to have a Dawnbreaker study, because this staying at home all the time and talking to your computer is really not fulfilling.
Well, that is a good point. However, now we have someone who has a question. Farida Vaya, she patiently had her hand raised.
Are you serious, Farida? Farida
Yes.
Vaya? Oh my God.
Allah, oh my God.
You know, speaking of which, this wonderful woman was my neighbor in India, and her and her husband Saruz were such a support for Ocean 1.0. I mean, you know, getting those CDs put out, that was half Saruz, okay? Farida, it's wonderful to hear from you.
Thank you so much. You know, believe me, I was so depressed today. And after I saw you, so God, my witness, I jump. You know why? Because always my husband, George, any subject he wants for years, go to ocean and tell to the Baha'i, you want to find the right thing, go to the ocean. And last year in Los Angeles, Mr. Hooper Dunbar came teaching the Kitab-e-Iqan in Farid Shahriyari's home. We was guests there, and Farid was sahwa came because of Hooper Dunbar and Farzan Kamalabadi. And because he was in the same house, we have private meeting with Mr. Hooper Dunbar. Of course, he mentioned about ocean and many private subjects. And he was telling to me, Hans of the Coast Khaze was pioneering in Brazil, and he encouraged him. He has so much deepness with Hooper Dunbar. Me and Hooper Dunbar have some kind of connection. But this ocean, Baha'i youth of the world must to learn. God, my witness, many Baha'i youth wants to know, they cannot find you, they don't know about this website. Because I was last night with Australia, it was night time, the Baha'i saying, we want to go to English program, we want our knowledge become more. And I said, my God, this is you, you're already here, the ocean here. And Baha'u'llah, bless who helping you, who is supporting you, blessed all the word of God. The last thing I mentioned about the Dawnbreaker, my favorite subject. I had the bounty hands of the Coast Federation come to Hong Kong. I take him around all the time, private meeting with his wife. I said, how you became Baha'i? He said, in those days, it was no Baha'i pamphlet. Somebody gave him the books of Dawnbreaker. He said, he has Australian accent, and he said, I couldn't understand in Persian, but I read it. Oh, the soul of Mathura has come to help me. And then I show my grandfather's picture, the two brothers, the picture, beloved guardian put, that is the survivor of the fourth Tabarsi, the guardian put their picture down because this is my aunt sister. He said, Faride, everywhere in the world you go teach the Dawnbreaker. You are very good at Dawnbreaker. And I did for years and years. Baha'u'llah blessed you. You're doing a wonderful job. In disaster comes, something happened, books destroy it. This will remain. My last question, I didn't ask question. How many people are behind of this? How are you going to continue? How you can involve all the international Baha'i youth? I am connected with Africa, with South America, with Asia. I have friends everywhere. I have in the phone night and with many people in the world. They want self to faith. They don't know how to do. This is, you are here. Oh my God. This lecture, I wish everybody was there. Thank you so much. I get excited. I talk anymore, I will heart attack.
Well, you know, we should have something on the Dawnbreaker sometimes, because this is a book that Baha'is don't really know what to do with it. You know, it seems to be a book by Nabil. And what's that? I mean, who's Nabil, right? But this book is so interwoven into the Baha'i faith. I mean, you have literally Baha'u'llah commissioned Nabil to write this book, and then Baha'u'llah reviewed the book, and then Shoghi Effendi edited it, and then at the end of the day, Shoghi Effendi made it part of that core set of literature that all the Baha'i youth are supposed to master as the foundation of their Baha'i identity. And it's not just that history is identity, which is true everywhere. But also this book introduces you to the martyrs. And there's something about martyrdom. There's something about knowing the lives of the martyrs. There's a dozen letters from Shoghi Effendi about how knowing their lives will create in us the desire to arise and achieve the same. And it cannot be overestimated how significant that is, especially nowadays when the whole world is obsessed with outward things, obsessed. And they really believe this time, I mean, they kill millions of people every time they try some utopia, but they think they can get it right over and over again. And the Dawnbreakers, the meditation on death is the antidote to materialism. This is my opinion, but I've seen this mirrored in the letters of the Guardian. The Guardian was really strong on the necessity of Baha'is to know their history. And the Dawnbreakers is not a complete history. It's step one in Baha'i history. But unless you master the Dawnbreakers, all of Baliuzi is lost on you. Unless you master the Dawnbreakers, Taherzadeh is lost on you. I mean, we still have Mujan Momin alive with us today, but he's like retired from history in a sense because the Baha'is aren't pummeling him with questions. If the Baha'is don't know their history, they won't have any use for those who are experts in the area. And so, yeah, we have a long way to go just to get back to normal on this one. So thank you for your enthusiasm.
Thank you so much. I must say thank you so much.
We can put out tools. Individuals can put out everything except directives. We can make it easy for people to do. We can put out please. I can say please. If you are an adult, grab a kid and read the Dawnbreakers with them, okay? But it's not a program. I can't give you a 3-year program you should follow or something like that. Just a plea that, you know, our literature is all we've got. We are not special in any other way except the book. And so the closer we are to the book, the better we know the book, the more we have to offer the world. That's it. That's what being a Baha'i is all about. Everything else is imagination. You know, if we think we can fix the world without being spiritual, without living in the city of God, which is the book that descends from God every 1,000 years, if we don't live there, we can't invite others to come in. You can't tell someone to do something you haven't already done. So I don't know really what the question was, but it got me very excited. Thank you very much. It's great to hear your voice.
Thank you.
So there are a lot of questions, and I'm going to try to be able to cover some of them. There is one request as to getting Ocean to par and being able to make things better. Please, as members of the audience, be testers of this program, Ocean 2.0. Come up with new features that makes it more useful to you and let us know. More importantly, these things, as you act as a tester and again, you come up with features that you think of that Ocean could become better with, these things you can send through the app. You can actually notify what you think needs to be done to make it better. I think Chad is going to show us.
There's a contact link right in the main menu of Ocean. And that sends an email straight to me. So if you come across any questions, this is kind of my personal service project. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to bother me. I love helping people out. But also if you come up with bugs, you see problems in the text, let me know. We fix them and deploy the fixes as fast as possible.
Yes, so that is on the application on the computer. You go on Contact Us right there. And again, you can make your idea known. So
I have a little Sacred Traditions website where some of my activities are, and it also has a contact form, which does the same thing. So either way, let me know, send me screenshots if you can, but you know, send me any feedback you want. It's helpful.
Yes. And Payam, you had a few questions. Payam, do you mind if you just ask your question? Unmute and ask it.
Which one?
Well, now you're going to have to choose your best one.
The easiest one, please.
Well, I had two, I think, that was answered. One was has there been any initiative with the BIHE regarding using the app for their studies? And the
No,
second,
so to answer that question quickly, I'm trying really hard to make this an interfaith project, and I don't want any uncomfortable, relationship with any official institution that would make it too biased. I really am working hard to try to provide really good Islamic study tools and Christian study tools on par with the Baha'i ones as well. So although I am a Baha'i, I'm trying not to have it be overly biased to the point where other faiths don't want to use it. So no.
okay. Secondly, is it possible to add a feature where when you click on a word, it just pronounces it for you? A bit like Quran.com. I don't know if you've been to Quran.com, but
Yeah.
it has that kind of feature. So, sometimes you just want to hear a word like a few times.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So you've probably noticed you can play from any word, but then it just keeps on going.
Yeah.
Mirza Muhammad Taqi.
So you can kind of do that, but it's not as flexible as, you notice how painfully long our context menu is becoming. So when we play from a word, we should just play the highlighted section if it's more than one word. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, because it is quite useful, especially if we're doing the Arabic, for example. If you want to hear a word once or twice to see how it's pronounced,
Yes.
it's quite a useful tool.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So there is another question from our friend here, Alex Boyson. Alex, would you like to ask your question directly?
Yes, thank you. I've been an avid user of your software, and it's just amazing, these developments and what it can offer. It just blows one's mind. Thank you, Chad. The question is for a non-Baha'i, given the oceanic amount of literature, could you recommend some Baha'i books for starters that could ease one into to the spirit of the Dawnbreakers book?
So you mean for non-Baha'is?
Yeah.
Starting books for non-Baha'is to get them into the Dawnbreakers. I'll tell you a fun story. In Alaska, we had a bunch of Baha'i youth in the 70s start a Dawnbreakers class. And the class almost became a runaway teaching project because the non-Baha'is took it over. They just loved the book. So I don't know. There's no, the Dawnbreakers is a bandage you got to rip right off. There's no painless way to do it. It is helpful for anyone reading the Dawnbreakers if they do a few things like study the glossary, learn the transliteration, just a few minutes of preparation really lubricates the reading of the book. So, but as far as books to build your way up to the Dawnbreakers, I don't know. The book reads really well. It's when people actually sit down and read it, they really enjoy the story. So it's in the abstract that I remember growing up as a Baha'i, the only thing I knew about any of the writings of Shoghi Effendi was that they were difficult. And I'm pretty sure the Baha'i community didn't intend for that to be the message, but that's kind of where we ended up. And so I don't know. I think Dawnbreakers with audio is good enough. Now, the introduction is the hardest part of the book. So skipping the introduction can help. Or read it with someone who knows the basic history and can clarify things. But I don't know. Every time we try to say, okay, this book is hard, so let's dumb it down a little bit. So as an introduction, it ends up being much less interesting. This is why the dumbed down approach to education never works, because the more you dumb down education, the more boring it becomes and the less it actually imparts. So it never becomes an on-ramp. It always becomes an obstacle. And so this is, all we've managed to do with the Dawn. I mean, we had out of India, we some intrepid woman in India created a kind of an abridged version of the Dawnbreakers, and it was really a lot of work. She tried really hard. She made something it's okay, but it cuts out all the good stuff. You know, the more you try to simplify it down, oftentimes the more you cut the soul out. So I'm a little bit skeptical about the ability to do that. The Dawnbreakers is already an introductory work for young people. Now, the standard of what a young person was in the 30s is changed a lot from now. Nowadays, you know, like they say, the latest curriculum in school in America has eliminated Shelley's Frankenstein because it's too difficult for 18-year-olds to read. But Mary Shelley was 18 when she wrote it. You know, so standards of literacy have gone way down over the centuries, which is a little bit contrary to what you often hear. But when The Guardian was working with the young people of Amatul Baha's generation in the 30s and creating a curriculum of reading for them so that they could be effective teachers when he launched the first 7-year plan, he at least could assume that people had a decent literary education and they were able to read a book. It wasn't true of all the Baha'is, and when they wrote to him, asked Shoghi Effendi, could you simplify things down for those of us? He would politely write back and remind them that that English is not his first language, and so he had to struggle to learn English also. Yeah, something like that. So you get the idea that the Baha'i solution is to raise our expectations rather than to lower our expectations. Lowering expectations is the Achilles heel that destroys all education.
Well, isn't there the term, I think, from Shoghi Effendi, he says, get worthy?
I don't remember that one, but I remember in the Deepening compilation, there's a letter where he says the Baha'is must always strive to raise the standard of studies. And there's a number of letters warning about the harm, consequent harm of failing to properly master the literature before entering the field of teaching. And again, this is not the type of thing you hear Baha'is repeating a lot, but you know, the Guardian wouldn't have said it if it wasn't useful for us.
Thank you so much. A true inspiration.
So I want to read this, actually. I pulled up from this Facebook page, Baha'i Prayers, Quotes, and Stories. How many stories are there at the hands of the cause of God who were shocked by their appointment because they knew how unworthy they were? John Roberts thought the telegraph was for his wife. When William Sears was appointed, he wrote back to the Guardian saying, not worthy. The Guardian replied, get worthy.
Ah, nice.
If the Friends always waited until they were fully qualified to do any particular task, the work of the cause would be almost at a standstill. But the very act of striving to serve, however unworthy one may feel, attracts the blessings of God and enables one to become more fitted for the task. And this is from Shoghi Effendi from Promoting Entry by Troops.
Thank you. That was nice.
So I think that it is 12:36 p.m. I know that a lot of you who have joined have had a lot of questions, and we've tried to hit a lot of them. So excuse me for having us to cut us short, but we do have that time limit. As a matter of getting questions answered, you can go to www.clearwaterbaha'is.org, contact us through the website, and Jeremiah can get you connected with Chad to get answers. With that being said, you also, as Chad has shown in this video, he's shown you how you can, on the Ocean app, even submit suggestions if you have some major questions relating Ocean. And of course, questions usually lead to interesting solutions. He may also have something to contribute to Ocean because of your good questions. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this Sunday in March. I know there's a lot of Baha'is here who are fasting, so we wish you a very good day fasting and a happy dinner when you get to it.